Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, the weather has moderated a bit. We're going to find out what's going to happen to utility prices, electric, oil, and natural gas. Are they going up? Are they going down? We got our resident expert on the scene to give us a quick update. And then the business climate in the state. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? All of that follows this message.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome to the program, and thanks for watching. Well, as often is the case, we turn to our resident expert on energy prices, Mike Love. He's the president of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. He's a frequent guest on Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Mike, welcome to the program as always.
Great to be here, Terry. Thank you.
All right, I'll tell you, we had this fairly nice little winter going on here in the Northeast until about a month ago. Then we had some snow and ice and some cold weather. It's moderating a bit. Give us a kind of a quick update on what you think is going to happen in the all-important energy price situation that a lot of our viewers care about. We care obviously about electric, oil, and natural gas. Give us a quick update.
Well, 85% of the state is still under price caps, and so electric is going to remain relatively stable. There'll be some slight increases for some of the companies,
okay,
but nothing drastic. And I would jump to say that we are fortunate in the state of Pennsylvania because over the last 10 years, electric prices have only gone up 6.5%. To put that in perspective, the price of an unleaded gallon of gasoline has gone up 80%. A ton of coal has gone up 90%. The consumer price index went up 30%. So electric has been a catalyst, if you will, for economic growth.
Because the prices have been relatively low, and that's enabled money to go into other areas.
That's right. And people might not remember, but 10 years ago, when we started looking at electric deregulation in the state, our prices in Pennsylvania were significantly higher than the national average. Significantly higher. And that was chasing away businesses, that was chasing away...
Is that because there was a monopoly, by a few companies, or what basically explains that?
I think energy choices that had been made.
Okay.
I don't know all the factors, but what I would say is the good news is that today we find ourselves being much better than the national average. So to the homeowners over there, or the business owners, they know that by living in Pennsylvania, they're better economically, at least as far as electricity is concerned, than elsewhere. On the other ones you mentioned, and gasoline prices, oil prices, about the same as they were a year ago. While we've seen a little upturn recently, that just got us back to where we were a year ago. I expect that gasoline prices will continue to rise over time, and faster than other energy types. I think that's just in the cards because we're now in international markets. And there's things going on in Nigeria. There are things going on elsewhere. That
Venezuela.
We'll
have to see what happens with Citgo and the nationalization of the oil refineries there.
And, we still have oil refinery shortages. But, and then in natural gas, we had seen a pretty large run-up in the cost of commodities that the natural gas companies pay. And we buy it from the people that bring it out of the ground, and they were charging a lot more. That's fallen back in part because of the weather you mentioned. And so natural gas prices this year are maybe 30% lower than they were last year.
Let's go to one of the things that I think our viewers need to understand when it comes to electric, it's pretty well regulated. Utility companies can't get increases in electric rates without going to the Pennsylvania PUC, the Utilities Commission. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we're very lucky in the state of Pennsylvania because we have 4 long-term serving public servants at the PUC who have been monitoring our situation to make sure that we do not end up like our friends down in Maryland did with extraordinary rate increases or what they had in California. And they've been doing that. The Senate has been having hearings, making sure both in the Senate and at the Commission that we are staying within what people can afford.
Now, let me make sure, before we go on to another, we're going to go to a break and I want to get into this business about these utility mergers and talk. I want you to talk about the effect of this. Repeat this again so our viewers get a clear understanding. Electric rates have been capped. So what is the average increase over the past year? Did you say?
I said over the last 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
The increase has been 6.5%.
Okay.
And you can see that change in gasoline in a week.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that I'll say. All right, we're chatting with Mike Love. We're going to talk about, there's been some utility mergers. I know that's kind of, what does that mean to you? That's what we're trying to do here, is explain what energy changes in the marketplace mean to you, and we'll do that when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers with Mike Love, the president of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. There are a couple of charts and graphs on average electric prices in Pennsylvania and U.S. You won't be able to make these out, but they're going to be on Mr. Love's website, energypa.org. Do I got that right?
You've got it right.
We've got utility prices compared to inflation and other commodities. Great source. Average electric prices in Pennsylvania and the U.S. You can't see that. I'm just holding it up. Get on energypa.org, and you'll be able to see those graphs, download them, I presume, and study them for next week's test. At any rate, let's talk about these. There have been a spate of utility mergers. Now, without getting into the complexity of it, why should our viewers care about that?
Well, I think they should care about it because, let's face it, regardless of what business you choose today, consolidations are going on.
Right.
In our business, electric and gas, it's very capital intensive, and you have to be a big fish, basically, to be able to build some of the facilities that are going to be needed for our energy future. To build a new nuclear plant, to build a new coal plant, to build gas pipelines, a new transmission line. This is very expensive dollars. And so by having larger entities, they are more financially able to pull that off. And, there's a big one that's going on in Pittsburgh right now that's before the Public Utilities Commission, where 2 of the 3 gas companies in Pittsburgh will be merging together. And the result of that will be that there'll be somewhere 100, 150 new well-paying jobs in Pittsburgh without any economic development funds, without any investment by the state. But the Public Utilities Commission is rightfully racing this through so that we can get those jobs located again in Pittsburgh. And that's good news. So sometimes with mergers, you often hear about people being let go, but sometimes with mergers, people are being added on.
People are being hired. One of the governor, has this very ambitious agenda. We've done a series of programs on it, and we've taken a look at a variety of aspects of it. We've not looked so much at the energy side of it. Let's talk a little bit about your response to the governor's energy proposal.
Well, first of all, as you and I have had many discussions on this point, we as a country have not had an energy debate, even though it has been a reoccurring problem for us. And so I applaud the governor for putting the issue front and center to be discussed, because it's long overdue. We have some infrastructure issues. We have some issues that we have to make about power supply. Like anything else, generating stations get old.
Right.
Transmission lines get old. Distribution lines need to be refreshed. And all of these decisions have to be put in a context that electric can drive either businesses into the state or out of the state. And so these are major issues. So the one thing that I'm extremely encouraged by is that the Public Utilities Commission, Secretary McGinty, and the governor have squarely put energy on the front burner. So I'm happy by that. Now, as to the specific proposals, some are good, some are bad, in my opinion. I mean, some of the good ones, certainly encouraging people to change their refrigeration, to change their air conditioning. Excellent plan. Those are major sources of energy. That has to be addressed. Other things that have to be addressed is when we say conservation and energy efficiency, do we mean it or don't we? And are we going to provide the right incentives for people, companies, etc., to get involved and start curtailing their usage?
And that means all sorts of things, like even at the home level, like making sure you turn lights out, making sure that you've got energy-efficient appliances, making sure that your home's winterized properly. That's the kind of thing you're talking about that the average, folks like me should, and our viewers out there should really be concerned about.
Right. One of the biggest steps anybody could do is take a smart thermostat, one that regulates and drops the temperature down when you're not there. Most people work. They don't need to have the same heat level when they're not at home. They can program a thermostat so it adjusts when they're home and when they're out. And that is a tremendous energy saver. And encouragement of that, encouragement of new rate designs, and focusing on what it takes to get people to conserve is important.
We have about a minute left. What is in the governor's program that you have some caution about?
Well, I certainly agree with the idea that we have to try to turn to alternative energy as much as we can. But we have to realize that the base load units, the nuclear, the coal, are critical, and windmills are peaking units. You use those when the demand of energy starts to go up. We need to keep in mind that we need to have a balanced energy portfolio, not one that goes off the deep end on any particular energy type, because we don't know what's going to be the best economic alternative in the future.
All right, Mike, as always, great update. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the business climate in the state. It's important. Where are the jobs? Who has them? What does it look like for the future? We'll take that subject up when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money, and by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, well, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Now joining me is Mike McCarthy. He is the president of the PA Business Roundtable. Are we all going to have jobs? What's the business climate look like in the state? We couldn't have a better guy to help us out here. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
All right, everybody say business roundtable. Now, what do you sit around a table? Come on, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, the roundtable's actually been in existence since 1979, and it's a group of CEOs and senior management from major corporations that seek to work collaboratively with the legislature, the governor, and other constituencies to promote public policies that are going to improve the business climate and the quality of life of the citizens of the state.
All right, so these are mostly major corporations in the state?
Mostly publicly traded, yes.
The big players, not the small business.
We have a couple, but mostly are publicly traded.
Mostly big players. All right, look, I think a lot of folks really care. I mean, I noticed that the former chairman of the Fed was out of this country predicting the country might go into a recession by the end of the year. What's your sense about the business climate? Let's just talk about Pennsylvania for a moment.
Sure. I think, by and large, the business climate in Pennsylvania is relatively good. I'd have to say, compared with other states, we're probably in the middle. There are a lot of different studies, as you're aware, which show us either being very good or being very bad. I think, we're in the middle of March here, and a lot of basketball fans are out there, and to make an analogy, it's kind of like a mid-level major. Sometimes we do very well in the tournament. Oftentimes we're on the outside looking in. What we really have to strive to be is one of those consistent top 10 teams that's always there.
I noticed that, in the 70s and 80s when the economy really went south, our unemployment was worse than the national average. I noticed in the last decade or so, our unemployment is actually better than the national average, so that there must be some more stability in the economy. I guess as we've gotten away from these old, the old coal and steel and heavy metals that used to dominate our industry. When we're diversified now.
Yeah, I think there are probably two factors. The diversity issue you talked about is a very important part of that. I think one of the other parts, unfortunately, is the fact that we haven't had a great growth in our population.
Yep.
And to some extent, that does mask
Yep.
our relationship with other states in terms of job growth.
And we tend to lose a lot of young people. We're a huge, we import a lot of students to go to college, and then they all seem to leave. I guess they call that the brain drain. We've actually talked
and that's
about
obviously a concern. Sure, we have to concern ourselves about the fact that our population is not growing, and the other aspect, frankly, is that our income, as compared with other states, is not growing. It's more or less flatlining along the same line.
All right, let's talk a little bit about, there are a couple of other dimensions. This one is, what do you think we have to do? We've gone through some diversification. You're down to the southeastern part of the state. It's actually pretty healthy. You've got pharmaceuticals, real estate, pretty booming. Once you get out of the southeast quadrant and maybe up into the capital area, and to some extent up in the northeast now, once you get sort of west of the Susquehanna, the state doesn't seem to do as well. Yeah.
Well, I think, obviously, and you've heard this time and time again, government doesn't create businesses, but it does create kind of the background for it. And I think what we're interested in the roundtable is to work collaboratively with the government, with other constituency, to develop our own set of factors that we can look to as the business climate. I think when we are able to do that, we can set some goals and put Pennsylvania in a better position than it is now.
Yeah. I know, let's sort of go through some of these. I mean, there's some specific areas that we've talked about over the years on this program with many guests who've weighed in, on differing sides of these issues. Governor recommends a budget. A lot of the things he recommends popular, but there are 5 or 6 of the big things he wants to do all have a tax item to it. All have a tax connected to it.
Right. Well, we're certainly concerned about the tax aspects, but we would like to look at the budget in a holistic manner.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that we're really concerned about, frankly, is the sustainability of the budget in the out years, as they call them.
Yep.
That could be a problem. I think one of the things we're looking at with regard to this budget and the taxes that are being talked about, this is the first time that I can remember, and perhaps you have a different memory, where there's a need for additional spending or additional revenues when the economy is basically pretty good.
Yeah.
And we have to be concerned about what it's going to be like in the out years when things don't go as well as they are now.
We're going to go to a quick break. I want to pursue that because of that's a great point that's not been made before, by the way. In the last couple of weeks, we've done programs on this, and this huge Medicaid situation staring the Commonwealth in the face. We're going to talk about that and some other items with Mike McCarthy after we pay some bills. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Builders Association, building today for a better tomorrow. And by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I'm chatting with Mike McCarthy from the PA Business Roundtable. He's the head of that organization. We're chatting about the business climate in the state of Pennsylvania, the short-term and the long-term look. Mike, let's talk a little bit about, you brought up something that's pretty revealing. We've hinted at it before. We've not gotten into it much in depth. But yet even Bill DeWeese, the majority leader in the State House, said that the state is going to end this year in a deficit.
Right.
That's without Governor Rendell's ambitious, these 5 or 6 big things. That's a pretty telling statement coming from the Democratic leader.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the deficit and what that could mean. And that's notwithstanding what we could see with all these new programs that Governor Rendell recommended.
Let's talk about it as it relates to the business climate.
Okay.
As time goes on and the revenues perhaps are not there to meet the cost of these different programs, they're going to have to make some decisions. All right.
Yep.
And that may mean, unfortunately, pushing back on business, increased taxes. And I think I'd like to emphasize why it's important to relate the business climate to this very issue. One of the ways that government should be paying attention on how to pay for these programs, candidly, is improving the business climate. Because if you can get more people, better jobs, more businesses, more revenues, there's a way to pay for it. Otherwise, quite frankly, given the system we have now, it's going to be rather difficult to meet the burden. Certainly this year I think it's going to be difficult, but certainly in the out years it's going to be more difficult.
And that's, typically what that then means is that we're going to have to look either to the business taxes, which the state has been slowly reducing.
Right.
Most of the folks we've had on from the business community have not been. They've been happy they're going down,
Sure.
but not happy about the pace. Do I got that about right?
I think that's true. I think the other thing that's really of concern to our members is the CNI rate, and that's the
corporate net income.
We have the
tax.
second highest, and to quote a CEO from the western part of the state, it hangs like a skull and crossbones above the state.
Do you think look, one of the things that we need to do, and I think you would agree here, is to attract business. It's tough, as you point out, low population growth, brain drain. How do we attract businesses when they're fleeing to the South and the Southwest?
Right.
Is the corporate net income tax, is the tax that business pays, is that a huge barrier or a middle or kind of a...
Well, I think it's all part of the picture. Our members tend to look at it holistically, and different companies will look at different issues. I think the key is, in Pennsylvania, what we have to recognize is there are factors that are going to guide business decisions. We have to look at it holistically,
right.
And we have to be stronger in some areas to overcome some weaknesses that we can't deal with.
All right, we have about a minute. It's probably unfair, but I want to ask you about the health care proposal that you've been talking about. I noticed you wrote a editorial piece in the Harrisburg Patriot a couple of weeks ago, doing with tax credits in health care.
Right.
Just get into that briefly.
This is something we've been working on. It's a work in progress. We see it as complementary, frankly, to the governor's proposal. But the idea would be to give credits to those companies that provide the health care, kind of the reverse of what Maryland did in the what people refer to as the Walmart law,
right.
where they penalized them for not providing the health care. We see this as beneficial to on the health care side and certainly on the business climate side, because the focus would be on the companies
right.
that are providing those good jobs with good benefits.
So you do the health care, you get a tax credit. That would be an incentive for people to cover their employees. That's the point. Instead of having people drop it.
Right.
Which is too often the case now because they can't afford it, or they do deductibles or whatever, co-pays.
Sure. It's a difficult issue. The key issue is how you're going to pay for it, but it's a work in progress, and we're hoping to work with different constituencies on it.
Great update. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as I like to say, stay well.